In today's video, I want to discuss ask culture versus guess culture. To illustrate these concepts, I want to give an example. I read online about a man who his wife's sister wanted to come visit them, and they'd visited in the past, and he just decided he didn't want to host his wife's sister for whatever reasons. And the sister had just asked, can I come visit you guys in 3 weeks for a week? She just asked that blatantly. And the man was very upset by this because he didn't know how to say no, and he was asking the internet for advice. And it turned out all the commenters ended up in either the ask culture camp or the guess culture camp. The ask culture commenters said things like, well, just say no. I mean, to them, it was a request and you just answer it, and it's simple, it's no. You don't have to give any explanation, you don't have to give any rationale, you just say simply no. And the guess culture people totally got it. This man fit into the guess culture world, and they said, we get it. And their responses were all about, how could the sister have the gall to even ask in the first place? How rude of her to put him in the position to have to say no. And then they gave him advice on how to navigate it without actually saying no, by being deceptive. For example, saying something along the lines of, oh, we're busy that week, so we can't host you. Which, most adults are busy every week, so it's just stretching the truth a little. But then that's keeping the door open for her to ask for other future events. Because then the next time she asks, she says, well, I know you guys were busy that week. Perhaps there's a week you're less busy, and then I can come visit. So by stretching the truth, he's leaving the door open for her to ask in the future periods. What's interesting about ask culture is people who grow up in the ask culture are taught, if there's something you want, just ask for it. But the caveat here is that if someone says no, you accept it. You don't need an explanation. If you ask for something, someone can say no. Hey, can I borrow $20? I'll pay you back tomorrow. Yes, great. No, oh, I don't need an explanation. That's fine. Whereas guess culture people are taught not to ask for something, but instead to sort of probe and use subtle clues to understand the response. And it's so tricky that if you were a guess culture person, you might probe and say things like, oh, I'm going to be in your neighborhood in 3 weeks, and I need to spend 3 nights there. Do you know of a good hotel that is also affordable? So they're subtly probing, and then the sister and the husband might say something back if they were guest culture, like, oh, there aren't any affordable hotels, but here's one nearby that you can stay at. And then out of politeness, they might also say, we're pretty busy that week, but you can stay with us. And they're trying to send subtle clues to her that even though they're making that offer, it's not a genuine offer. It's kind of a politeness, a courtesy for them to offer. And so she even has to have this subtle understanding, oh, that's not really a real offer, so I better not take them up on it. So guess culture, although very subtle and nuanced, can be very frustrating for people who come from an ask culture, because they think, why are you guys doing all this guesswork and trying to figure out what's going on in other people's minds? Why not just be open and honest about your communication? Similarly, people in guess culture can be very frustrated by ask culture requests, because their thought is, don't put me in a position to say no. I don't want to be the bad guy here. Or if they're on the other side of it, hey, I thought when I asked you that you were going to say yes. Well, why are you saying no? And so guess culture people can find ask culture people very off-putting. The biggest challenge of guess culture is you learn all these subtleties, but that's only for people who share your subculture. And if someone didn't grow up kind of with the same culture as you, they might not get the same clues. So even if you're dating someone who's also a guest culture in your guest culture, but if your kind of subcultures were different enough, the subtle cues that work for you might not work for them, and vice versa. If you start to switch to an ask culture model, then it doesn't matter what culture you're from. You can just ask for whatever you want. with the caveat being accepting no is something that if you can avoid being emotionally attached to the answer, then ask culture works a lot better. Guest culture, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just can be very challenging, especially if you're working with people from other guest cultures or with people from ask cultures. Guest culture is rich, where if you are watching a movie and you're interested in these intriguing, subtle plot twists, then guest culture, people with guest culture backgrounds are very interested in that subtle twist. Or if you're reading a novel with some subtleties, then it's helpful to have that background, and it might be fun to read novels that are more on the subtle side. However, if you're in the business world, it can be extremely challenging to get what you want if you haven't figured out how to ask for it. If you're forcing people around you to guess at what you want, you're probably going to miss out on some promotions. You're probably going to miss out on some raises. And so in the work world, asking for what you want becomes more important. Again, with the caveat that when you ask for a raise or a promotion, accepting the word no. And instead of being emotionally attached and be like, that's a rejection, recognizing that it might just, they can't give you a raise this time because they don't have the money, or perhaps they can't give you a raise this time because they don't feel like the work you're doing justifies a higher wage. So you can usually follow up those rejections, that answer no, with, okay, well, now that you know where I want to get to, let's make a clear path for me to get there. I eventually want to get promoted into this position, or I definitely want to get a 20% raise by such and such a time. What are the things you need to see from me where we can make that happen? And that's going to advance most people's career a lot more quickly than someone who keeps it hidden and thinks, oh, my talents, I feel like I should be getting paid 20% more because I'm doing a lot of amazing work. But if you're not sharing that information, and then you're frustrated with your manager because they're not guessing that you want a promotion or a raise, and you think, well, of course they should know I want a raise. Well, the facts are managers don't have a crystal ball, and they don't have a perfect window into your thoughts. Other places guest culture can go awry is if you're in a relationship. If you're in a relationship and you're guest culture with someone who's from ask culture, there can be challenges in that divide and frustrations. And like I said earlier, even if you're dating someone who is also guest culture, but if they don't have the same similar subculture as you, maybe they came from a different country, or maybe even they came from the same country but a different subculture, those subtle cues that you tune into are very challenging. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention that there is something called guest culture. If you are an ask culture person who thinks, oh, just ask for what you want, and if someone says no, no big deal, just know that, hey, if you're one of those people, there are people out there who are saying, no, you should subtly probe and not ask directly, because I don't want to be put in the position where I'm having to say no to you because I feel like that's rude. And so a guest culture person doesn't even want to be asked something that they have to say no to. Or on the other side of it, a guest culture person wants to be able to probe and subtly tune into the subtleties enough that they know the answer in advance, so by the time they ask for it or it's offered, it's already a yes. So they never had to handle that sort of rejection. If you appreciated this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you want more content. And of course, the comments always help me figure out what additional content to provide. Thank you very much.